Hello, YouTube. So, believe it or not, I get asked this question all the time. And people ask me when it comes to the Korg Kronos, they ask, how do I make layers? How do I do splits? And how do I set up my own combinations? And so that's why I decided to make this tutorial. Hope you enjoy it. All right, welcome back to another tutorial here for the Korg Kronos. And today, as you could tell by the description, we are going over splits and layers, how to create your own splits and layers using combination mode with the Korg Kronos. And this is one of the most common questions I get about the Korg Kronos, and it is pivotal to my performances. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time and show you the little bit of knowledge that I do have as far as creating combinations and layers and splits. And so let's go ahead and get into it. So first things first, I want to say before I get into actually creating a combination or split layers, anything like that, there are a few things that I consider. One main thing that I consider really when it comes to creating a combination. Because I do a lot of live playing when I create a combination, I'm creating a combination, layers, splits, I'm creating them to play live, and so I'm always considering polyphony. Polyphony is so important, and I don't want to run out of polyphony. Yes, you can take 16 sounds, and you can put 16 sounds all together, and you can play 16 sounds all at once. But in most cases, if you actually literally had 16 sounds going on at the same time and you were playing a few chords, you are going to run out of polyphony very, very quickly. And so one of the things that I'm always considering when I'm putting together combinations is I'm considering which sound engines I'm using. The SGX2, which is the piano sound engine, has 100 dual stereo voices, or that's 400 mono voices, maximum polyphony. The HD1 has 140 voices polyphony, and that's where most of your sounds are in the HD1. The AL1 has 80 voices. The Poly 6 has 180 voices. And so I am, or the CX3, the organ engine, has 200 maximum polyphony voices. So when I'm putting together and stacking sounds, I am considering which sound engines I am using. If I can get away with not using the MS-20, which is 40 voices, or the Mod 7, which is 52 voices, or the STR1, which is the string sound engine, which is going to be 40 voices. If I can get away with not using those, I won't. Or if I do need to use those because it's some sort of a unique sound, I will make sure that I'm not layering tons of voices on top of those using those same sound engines, because you'll run out of polyphony. So a little trick that I've learned also as far as polyphony, to make sure that I don't run out of voices or that I'm not getting voice stealing and whatnot when I'm playing, is if you go to your global settings, there's a mode over here. It's called mute mode, and by default, the mute mode is set to studio. But I like to have it set to live. And what that does for me is when I mute an instrument in a combination, if the instrument is muted, it is not using any of the polyphony that's available in the system. If it's set to studio instead of being set to live, even if your instrument is muted or even if it's turned all the way down, the Kronos is still activating those voices, and so it's still eating up your resources in your keyboard. So if you're going to be playing live, I would definitely recommend, instead of having it set to studio, that you have it set to live. And again, that's just going to global, and your global channel in your basic setup, in your global parameters, it's a mode here. It's called mute mode. All the way down on the page here, you hit the little arrow and change it to live. So that's what I do for my global settings, and then I save those global settings. I write them to the, well, let me see how you do it here. So you would set it up, and then you would come over here, and then you say write global setting. And after you write global settings, every time you turn your keyboard on, it will save that setting, and you won't have to do it again. So it's kind of a one-time thing where you set it and forget it. So anyway, let's get into creating some layers and creating some splits combinations. So layers and splits are created in combination mode. Now, technically speaking, a split is just a layer where your where you set your different zones for your keyboard. So a split and a layer are technically the same thing, except you're going to just have certain voices assigned to certain parts of the keyboard. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into combination. You want to hit combination if you're not in combination already. And we want to set up an initialized combination, or init combi as it's going to say on the screen. And literally you can just go to your user bank A, and you should have a bunch of initialized combinations ready for you to go there. I've got some combinations and stuff used up, obviously, but you may not. So you want to select an initialized combi so that what you get is all, piano all the way across all 16 channels. Okay, so we have an initialized combination now, and we are ready to go and begin to start our programming. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to change channel number 1. I want to change it to a different piano, and so I'm going to come over here and hit where it says keyboard so I can do a category search. You can also do it by bank if you wanted to. So you could come down here and you could select this one instead, and it's going to give you, your various banks that you can select, but it's not categorized by instrument type. It's just categorized by bank. So I like to do it by instrument type because I know I'm looking for an acoustic piano. So I'm come down here, I hit acoustic piano, and let's say I didn't know the name of the piano that I wanted, or I knew the name of it, but I didn't want to be scrolling trying to look for it. I could always just hit this magnifying glass to hit the search. And this is going to allow me to search for what I want to look for. And I know what I want to go after here. Let's delete this. And let's go to, I'm looking for the German grand. So I can type in German. Uh-oh. Typos. Grman. That's how you spell German, right? And just say find. And then it pops it up. Korg Kronos German grand. Now I can go to the next one, and it'll bring up the next one that's a German. German dark grand. Next. R Ferrante German grand. But anyway, I'm going to use the regular German grand. All I have to do is hit OK. And now it's the German grand instead of the Berlin grand. So now that's channel number 1. Channel number 1 is set. Okay, now we're doing layers. So I need to pick another instrument. So my next instrument I'm going to choose, I want to do a warm pad. I'm going to do the warm pad on channel number 2. So I go to channel number 2 and basically repeat the same process. I can go down here to search if I want to. Let's go ahead and get rid of that German. And then let's type in warm pad, W-A-R-M. Last time I checked, that is how you spell warm pad. Hit find. There's the warm pad I'm looking for. Hit OK. And now I have a warm pad. Now the warm pad is not actually sounding when I hit the keyboard. And that's one of the things that actually stops a lot of people. This kind of stumps a lot of people when they're doing their, when they're putting together their layers, because it's like, okay, I select another instrument and all I'm hearing really is still just the piano. That's because all we're playing is MIDI channel number 1 right now. And because MIDI channel number 1 is set to the piano, that's what you will hear. You're only hearing channel number 1. You're not hearing 2 through 16 at all. So what we need to do is we need to change warm pad from channel number 2, because that one is set to channel number 2. We need to change it to channel number 1, and then we'll hear it. And the way you do that is you go to your timbre parameters here. And then we're going to go to MIDI, the MIDI tab. And right now we can see there's a number 2 there. We just need to spin the dial all the way over until we get to until it says 01G. That's channel number 1 or the global channel. And now you can hear the pad come through. So now we have officially a layer. Okay, and so what we can do with the layers is we can use our sliders over here, provided that you are on timbre and track. You have this button selected and channels number 1 through 8. So the light by 1 through 8 should be lit up over here on the left-hand side. You can control your volume levels right here. So channel number 1 is my piano, and channel number 2 is my pad. If I bring them both down, you hear nothing. If I bring up the piano, you hear piano, and I can bring pad in. So now we have a layer set up. Now, of course, let's say I was playing a song and I didn't need the pad sound. What I normally do is I come up here with these buttons. These buttons are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These 8 buttons here. These are your mute buttons. So I can hit mute, and it's going to say a mute. It's going to show that you muted it on your touchscreen as well. I can hit mute and just have the piano. And what that's going to do for me is it's going to reserve my voices. Any channel that I am not actually using to play, I mute it. If I need to bring it in later, I may have it, actually have it on and just have it down. But just know you are using more polyphony when you do that. So I like to reserve voices as much as I can. So now we have a layer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a split. A split and a layer are actually the same thing. The only difference is you're going to be setting your keyboard zones. So one plays on one side and one plays on another side, but it's still actually 2 voices. So I'm going to do a kind of a traditional split that a lot of people do. I'm going to do my piano on my right side, and on my left side, I'm actually going to do a bass. And so the way that's done is I come into, let's change channel number 2 from the warm pad, and let's pick a bass here. So I'm going to come down to the category search and click on bass. I want it to be an electric bass. I'm going to select E bass, and what bass should we do? Velocity bend bass. Hit OK. Now I have a bass and piano set up. But of course, we don't want the bass and the piano set up. So across the whole keyboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to split it. And the way that is actually done is you have to come over here to your MIDI filter zones tab and hit that tab. And then you're going to come over and hit the secondary tab where it says keyboard zones and hit that tab. And so the first thing we're going to do is, hey, we want the piano. Let's say that I want the piano's lowest note to be C sharp. And after that, I want it to be all bass. So I'm going to come over where it says bottom key. You see how bottom key is selected here. Bottom key C1. I want to change the bottom key to this. And the easiest way to do it, rather than numbering, okay, C1, C sharp 2, and whatnot, and trying to figure it all out, is you can just hold down the enter button and hit the note. And that becomes the bottom note for the piano. And after that, it's all bass. Right? And so now we have to repeat the same thing for the bass, but we're going to actually change the top note because we want the bass to go all the way down the bottom. We don't care about that, but we want to set the top note. So the way we set the top note for the bass is I'm going to come up here to channel number 2 and hit top note. And then we're going to hold down the enter key and we're going to change the top note to C. Now we have the bass and piano. So all right, so this is all piano and this is all bass. And that's how you create a split. So now you know how to create a split and you know how to create layers. And literally you can repeat the same thing. So if I wanted to add a pad up top, I can go to channel number 3, click on channel number 3, do a search. We'll go back to our warm pad, hit find. I'm just going to say, okay. Now channel 3 should be set up to warm pad. I've got to come in here to the timbre parameters, change number 3 to 1 global. Now channel number 3 has the warm pad associated with it. But even in the bottom register, it has it as well. So I don't want it to be up there. I just want it to be the pad on the piano. And so literally, I'm going to come in here to the MIDI zones, go to the keyboard zone, make sure I select number 3, but I'm going to select the bottom note. I'm going to hold down the enter key, and I'm going to hit the note, and that becomes the bottom note for the pad. and there's no pad down here. So now I have a keyboard and pad in my right hand side and a bass on the left hand side. So that's how you create combinations. That's how you create your splits, and that's how you create your layers. And of course, I would come over here. If I really wanted to save it, I would say write combination, give it a name, and store it. And then whenever I open my keyboard, it would be there for me to use. And so that's how that's done. It's kind of straightforward, I think, but I've been doing it for quite a while, so it feels straightforward to me. But of course, if you're coming from Roland, which I have a Roland, or you're coming from, Yamaha or something like that, it's a little different than maybe what you're used to. But that's how you create your layers, and that's how you create your combinations and your splits. And so now you should be off to the races. Thanks for tuning into my tutorial, and I'll see you on the next one.